Harry, in the Bible, Jesus talks about heavenly bread, but before we go there, let's start back in the Old Testament, and we're going to be in Exodus chapter 16, verse 4 and 5. It says, Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days.
Manna from heaven. Chapter 16 starts with the people grumbling against Moses. Exactly 1 month earlier was the first Passover. That was the day they started the journey out of Egypt. Now they were free, no longer slaves to the Egyptians, and they were grumbling, wishing to go back to Egypt. Could you read verse 31 and 35, please?
The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan.
A very interesting chapter. Be sure to read it. Back to the heavenly bread. Each day they were to gather it, just enough for the day. They could not hoard it. By the next day it stunk and had maggots in it. Except Friday, you gathered 2 times as much, so you had enough for the Sabbath. No manna that day, plus it did not spoil. How many miracles is that? Each morning it was there for the taking as much as you need. Miracle number 1. Don't obey. Miracle number 2, it spoils. Miracle number 3, Friday's manna keeps for 2 days, but you had to go get it. God did not put it into the pot. How special God treated them. Only the Israelites got this bread from heaven, not the Moabites, the Edomites, or the Ammonites. 40 years free food, but still they grumbled. Most died in the wilderness. Few crossed to Jordan into the promised land. Could you read John 6:30 to 35, please?
So they asked him, What sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Jesus said to them, Very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Sir, they said, always give us this bread. Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty.
What sign will you give me to prove who you are? They asked. The day before, Jesus had fed the 5,000 people with 5 loaves and a few fish. Now they wanted a sign. Jesus is that sign. He is the heavenly bread. The food they ate the day before proves who Jesus is. Could you read verse 28 and 29, please?
Then they asked him, What must we do to do the works God requires? Jesus answered, The work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent.
They now need to believe him, bread for the soul, and his teachings, of course. Believing Jesus means obedience to all his teachings, just like the manna in the wilderness. Each day you have to go out of bed and gather today's food for us and our family. Today's food gives us all we need for today and nothing for tomorrow. Many of Jesus' parables talk about being productive. As we gather for ourselves, we also gather for those around us. As branches of the vine, we get our nourishment, sap from the stem, as much as we need. And as we feed others, we too are fed. Could you read verse 35 again?
Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty.
Never be hungry, never be thirsty. Slowly and steadily we grow as we feed on this heavenly bread. It feeds our souls. If we feed on this bread, the attractions of Satan have less and less interest to us.
Harry,
And
so my
yeah,
question is this then. What do we need to do to receive this heavenly bread?
yeah, just like in the Old Testament, we have to go to get out of bed and go and get it and want it and that's how we live. That's how they lived, and that's how we need to live, because we want to feed our souls. It's Jesus who we need to feed, who we need to feed on, and feeds us and gives us the food and the water that we need to nourish our spiritual side forever.
And that's a daily thing. By like, if we reference it to the
Yep.
Old Testament there in Exodus, right? It's not just something that happens on a Sunday, for example, or twice a week. It's something that we need nourishment on a daily basis to be a part of this family.
If we only pulled up to the table, our physical table, once a week, we wouldn't do very well.
Exactly.
No.
Thanks a lot for this, Harry.
Thank you.